if you left with some kind of a feeling of hope and encouragement.
When you speak of fear, are you speaking about emotions or about the fear of the conflict up there?
Audrey Hepburn, an icon of grace, elegance, and timeless beauty. To many, her life was a modern fairy tale, a dazzling journey marked by a brilliant career and humanitarian efforts admired worldwide. We often recall her as the radiant princess, the sophisticated lady on the silver screen, or the woman devoted to impoverished children. But what if I told you that behind the glamour and her radiant smile, Audrey Hepburn's life held far deeper personal tragedies than you might imagine? There were scars from a war-torn childhood, silent pains in love and marriage, and the unseen burden of fame. What shaped a woman who was both fragile and remarkably resilient? Let us explore the haunting yet profoundly human corners of an icon's life. A stolen childhood and wartime trauma. The image of Audrey Hepburn, radiant on the silver screen, a symbol of elegance and grace, often evokes a life paved with roses. Yet few know that her early years were woven with profound pain and deprivation, planting the seeds for tragedies far deeper than one might imagine. From a young age, Audrey's life was marked by heartbreak. Her father, Joseph Victor Anthony Rustin, a mysterious figure, cruelly abandoned the family when Audrey was just 6 years old. His abrupt and callous departure not only robbed the young girl of a father's presence, but also left an immense emotional void, sowing seeds of abandonment, insecurity, and a longing for love that she carried throughout her life. Her mother, Baroness Ella van Heemstra, though strong and resilient, could not fill this gap. Audrey grew up lacking emotional warmth and closeness from both parents, a challenging and lonely start for a sensitive soul yearning for affection. These early wounds simmered quietly deeply, shaping how she viewed relationships and her lifelong desire for a complete family. But the tragedy did not end there. As Audrey entered her teenage years, World War II erupted, turning the Netherlands into an occupied land. She, along with her mother and relatives, endured the horrific hunger winter of 1944-1945 in Arnhem, a dark and merciless chapter in history. This was not mere hunger, but a brutal fight for survival. Food supplies were completely cut off, forcing Audrey and thousands of others to resort to desperate measures, eating tulip bulbs, grass, and even flour made from oak bark to stay alive. Chronic malnutrition left lasting scars on her health, including severe anemia, edema, and persistent respiratory issues. She was frequently ill, her frail body constantly plagued by sickness. Beyond physical suffering, Audrey's spirit bore deep wounds. As a young girl, she witnessed horrors, people collapsing from starvation in the streets, brutal public executions, and the constant fear under Nazi oppression. She saw innocent lives taken, homes destroyed, and a society torn apart. These tragic images not only haunted her mind, but instilled a profound sense of loss and injustice. To survive and contribute to the fight for freedom, Audrey risked her life as a secret courier for the Dutch resistance, hiding vital messages in her ballet shoes. The pressure of living in fear, witnessing death up close, and shouldering the responsibilities of the resistance placed an immense psychological burden on a young girl. These traumatic experiences carved indelible scars into Audrey's soul and body, shaping a resilient woman filled with compassion, but forever haunted by a longing for stability, family, and the peace she endlessly sought. This is stark evidence that her life was far more tragic than the luminous image the public often saw. Mel Ferrer, the shadow behind the spotlight. When Audrey Hepburn met Mel Ferrer, an actor and director 12 years her senior, She saw in him a seasoned, steadfast man who seemed capable of providing the protection she had always longed for. In 1954, they married in a romantic ceremony in Switzerland, and the world celebrated the talented couple. However, behind the glamorous facade of Hollywood, their marriage soon revealed deep cracks, pulling Audrey into a series of stressful and disappointing years. Ferrer was known to be controlling and patriarchal. He not only sought to guide Audrey's career, but also interfered deeply in her personal decisions. Audrey's rising stardom, particularly after monumental successes like Roman Holiday and My Fair Lady, inadvertently created a stark power imbalance in their relationship. Though a talented actor himself, Ferrer's fame paled in comparison to his wife's. This sparked a quiet professional jealousy, straining their bond further. He wanted her to live in his shadow, but Audrey's talent and charisma were too radiant to be overshadowed. The greatest pain in their marriage came from the repeated losses in Audrey's journey to motherhood. She yearned for a family, a child to bring fulfillment, but endured multiple heartbreaking miscarriages before giving birth to her son Sean in 1960. Each loss was a devastating emotional blow, eroding her hopes and leaving deep scars on her soul. These tragedies not only affected her physical health, but also bore heavily on her mental well-being, plunging her into depression and anxiety. Ferrer, it is said, failed to fully understand or share in these sorrows. After 14 turbulent years, marked by broken hopes, their marriage ended in 1968, leaving Audrey emotionally drained and deeply disappointed by a love that could not bring the peace she had sought. Andrea Dotti, When Trust Shattered, Under the Flashbulbs. After the collapse of her marriage to Mel Ferrer, Audrey Hepburn found a glimmer of hope in Andrea Dotti, an Italian psychiatrist 9 years her junior. She hoped this marriage would bring stability, peace, and a true family life far from the harsh spotlight of the stage. In 1969, Audrey married Dotti and moved to Rome, Italy, determined to focus on her roles as a wife and mother. She gave birth to her second son, Luca, in 1970, and it seemed her dream of a complete family had finally come true. Audrey even stepped away from Hollywood for nearly a decade to devote herself to her husband and children, a significant sacrifice for a star at the peak of her career. However, this happiness was short-lived. Andrea Dotti, though initially warm and romantic, soon revealed a pattern of infidelity. His blatant affairs with multiple women plunged Audrey into profound pain and public humiliation. The image of a legendary actress, a symbol of purity, enduring such open betrayal in the public eye was a deeply painful tragedy. This anguish was magnified as Audrey realized her longing for a peaceful family and a faithful husband had once again crumbled. Dotti's betrayal not only shattered her trust, but also deeply wounded her self-esteem and heart. Facing rumors and sensationalized tabloid stories about her husband's affairs left her devastated. Though Audrey tried to mend the marriage for the sake of their children, the cracks were too wide to repair. After 13 years of suffering and inner turmoil, their marriage ended in 1982. This marked Audrey's second marital failure, reinforcing her belief that lasting happiness in love might elude her. The pain exhausted her and made her even more guarded about her private life. Robert Wolders, a light at the end of the tunnel after many storms. After 2 tragic marriages, Audrey Hepburn's heart seemed hardened by pain, yet her yearning for genuine love and companionship lingered quietly. She found solace and peace with Robert Wolders, a Dutch actor. Their relationship began in 1980 and lasted until the end of her life, though they never formally married. Robert Wolders was described as kind, understanding, and sincere. He was not a fairy tale romantic, but offered Audrey what she craved, most peace and stability. Wolders did not seek to control her or compete with her fame. Instead, he provided unconditional support, deep friendship, and a safe space for her to be herself. After the storms of her past, Audrey finally found someone with whom she could share her final years without tragedy or betrayal. However, this serene relationship came only after immense suffering and disappointment. She had endured 2 failed marriages, abandonment, betrayal, and the loss of unborn children before finding this comfort. While Wolders brought her happiness, the scars of her past remained. His presence did not erase old wounds, but helped her learn to live with them. Audrey's late-life love story is a testament that even an icon of perfection had to travel a long, thorny path to find a simple haven where she was truly loved without further tragedy. It was a happy ending, but one that came only after countless trials and tears. The invisible burden of an icon. The world saw Audrey Hepburn as a fortunate star, a gifted actress blessed with fame and admiration. But behind her radiant spotlight, her career was not just iconic roles, but an invisible burden, demanding immense pressure and painful sacrifices that thrust her into a private tragedy few could understand. As a global star, Audrey Hepburn was no longer an ordinary individual. She became the focus of relentless scrutiny from the media and public. Every gesture, word, and even her private life was dissected in minute detail. The pressure to maintain a flawless public image was an immense burden. She had to appear elegant, graceful, and impeccable, even while grappling with personal pain, broken marriages, and lingering health issues from her wartime past. Rumors, tabloid stories, and endless prying into her private relationships wore down her spirit. Audrey was a sensitive and private woman, but a superstar's life allowed no such privacy. Every aspect of her personal life was exposed, from her heartbreaking miscarriages to her husband's infidelity, all fodder for public gossip. The pain was magnified as personal tragedies became hot news. She had to smile for the cameras while her heart was breaking. It was a tragedy of pretense, where a radiant exterior masked a wounded soul, unable to find peace even in her own home. The blinding debt of fame. Audrey's dazzling success in her acting career demanded relentless work involving grueling and prolonged filming schedules. With a body already fragile and weakened by wartime malnutrition, the harsh demands of the film industry became an overwhelming burden. She spent long hours under intense studio lights, traveled constantly between locations, and worked in physically demanding conditions. Major productions like My Fair Lady and Breakfast at Tiffany's required not only peak acting skills, but also immense energy. Audrey was frequently exhausted, and old health issues such as anemia and asthma resurfaced. Each bout of illness and physical collapse was a cruel reminder of the price she paid for fame. Physical fatigue led to emotional exhaustion. She had to keep performing, even off camera, constantly pressured to appear flawless. This slowly drained her inner vitality. The life of a superstar was not a paradise, but a machine that ground down both body and spirit, turning her into a prisoner of the very spotlight she had created. Perhaps the greatest tragedy of Audrey Hepburn's career wasn't the pressures, but the profound sacrifices she made for her family. After years caught in the whirlwind of fame and failed marriages, she realized what she truly longed for wasn't Oscars or public adoration, but a peaceful home and time with her children. In 1970, after giving birth to her son, Luca Audrey made a bold and painful decision. She stepped away from the peak of her acting career, nearly disappearing from the Hollywood screen for nearly a decade. This wasn't just a break. It was a tremendous sacrifice for an actress at the height of her stardom. She turned down million-dollar roles and tempting offers in exchange for time with her children in hopes of building the stable family life she had always dreamed of. This decision proved that her true worth wasn't defined by her career, but by her desire to be a mother and a wife. Yet it was also a heartbreak, as a woman of such talent was forced to choose between passion and family, and ultimately gave up everything to pursue a dream that in the end would still be incomplete as her second marriage fell apart. Her sacrifice revealed just how high a price she paid in her search for happiness, and how even the brightest fame couldn't fill the deep emptiness within her soul. Audrey Hepburn triumphed on screen, but behind the scenes, she struggled and sacrificed endlessly in her personal quest for peace, turning her life story into something far more tragic than its glamorous surface. After enduring the storms of her private life, one might have expected Audrey Hepburn to retreat in search of healing. But tragedy once again ignited something greater, transforming her personal pain into boundless compassion for humanity. Her humanitarian work with UNICEF was more than a role. It was a deeply moving response to the losses she had endured. Her decision to become a special goodwill ambassador for UNICEF in 1988 wasn't a random choice or a strategic career move. It was a heartfelt calling born from her own painful past. The haunting memories of the hunger winter in the Netherlands, the malnourished children, the starvation and the cruelty of war left deep marks on her soul. She understood better than most the pain of deprivation, the fear, and the vulnerability of children in conflict zones. Those personal childhood tragedies forged in her a deep, genuine empathy for the less fortunate around the world. As a UNICEF ambassador, Audrey worked tirelessly. She didn't just attend fundraising events or make speeches on television. She personally traveled to war-torn and impoverished regions: Ethiopia, Sudan, Vietnam, El Salvador, and Somalia. She braved hardship and danger, entering refugee camps, makeshift hospitals, and remote villages. She witnessed firsthand the heartbreaking scenes of children so malnourished, their bones protruded, babies orphaned by war, and families torn apart by disease and hunger. Every frightened child's gaze, every frail body echoed her own past pain and gripped her heart. These direct experiences only strengthened her belief in UNICEF's mission and became a constant reminder that fueled her unrelenting dedication. Audrey Hepburn's commitment to UNICEF was living proof that she had turned her personal tragedies into a force for good. She worked tirelessly, using her fame to draw global attention to humanitarian crises. She persuaded world leaders, raised millions of dollars, and elevated awareness of children suffering in poverty. Yet this was also a deeply moving tragedy in the final chapter of her life. As her health declined and cancer took hold, Audrey did not abandon her mission. On her final trips, she endured physical pain, but her spirit and compassion never faltered. She continued visiting the most remote places, embracing abandoned children, and speaking out for the voiceless. Perhaps seeing herself as part of something meaningful gave her one final sense of peace and purpose. Her dedication to UNICEF until her last breath was a powerful ending to a turbulent life. She gave herself her time, her strength, and what little health she had left to ease others' pain. It was a noble sacrifice, a lasting legacy. But behind it was still the sorrow of a woman who had lost much, who found her ultimate purpose not in fame or romance, but in using her suffering to bring hope to others. Audrey Hepburn's life was far more tragic than many realize, but all the greater because of it. Her life was marked by harsh misfortunes that might have crushed anyone else. Yet she never allowed the pain to defeat her. Instead, she transformed those scars into an endless well of compassion. Audrey Hepburn may be gone, but her legacy lives on, not only in her timeless performances or iconic elegance, but in the story of a woman who rose above hardship through kindness and resilience. Her life is proof that true beauty lies not in flawless perfection, but in the strength to rise again to turn sorrow into warmth. For those who have weathered life's storms, Audrey Hepburn's story is not just a tale of loss, but a lasting inspiration of what it means to overcome.